is really when we've hit a nerve,
everybody
right?
kind of joined
Before, if you're a brewery, it was a good chance you were going to go out of business. Like, it was a really good chance.
That's wild. So you had mentioned this, and I didn't mean to detract from us getting back into the brews, but I'm a big fan of the Hick. I want him to run for president. I want to vote for him. I find him like to be one of the most interesting cats ever. Do you know him personally? How is his demeanor when he was just a beer guy and not just like a beer nut that's also a politician?
Well, it's not that different now.
Same cat?
Like, he's a pretty regular guy now.
Yeah.
Like, you get in a conversation with him, he loves talking about music, he loves talking about beer, he loves talking about food. I don't consider him to be a politician at all. I consider him to be a pretty smart business guy, and then just a guy that really loves Denver and really loves the state of Colorado. And that he channels all that into what he's doing politically. I think there's politicians that act or behave very differently than he does when they're in office and in their work. So that's why I kind of gravitate to his style. Maybe it's similar to what you are, or why you like him.
He seems like a normal guy.
He's a normal guy. And so, yeah, when we got to work with him,
I've seen him hang out in Red Rocks, like in the bottom area.
Yeah.
And I was like, this guy is like a normal cat.
Yeah, and you know, we had a lot of fun there. Like, his apartment was right above the wind coop. Like, he lived above in the lofts. So the 3 stories above the wind coop were all private lofts.
So speaking of that, what was his beer choice?
I don't remember really what he drank, but there was a beer called what was it? Captain Hickenlooper's Brown Ale, and it wasn't for him. There was another Captain Hickenlooper, like in, I think it was in the Civil War or something.
Okay.
And so they just made that connotation. But I think Rail Yard was probably what he drank the most, because that was the flagship of the brewery, and the amber ales back then were the biggest deal.
Right.
Amber ales are what built this state. Fat Tire, Odell, 90 Shilling, Single Track, Avalanche, Rail Yard. Those are the beers that like got people into craft beer. IPAs didn't really exist that much in the 90s yet.
Well, yeah, let's talk a little bit. So I didn't mean to kind of send us off path, but let's talk about it. Like, you mentioned trends, like things like obviously craft beer in itself, but you also mentioned like IPAs. They seem to kind of be like hitting on all cylinders. Everybody loves the bells, sucking the dick of the Two-Hearted Ale, as well as like your Pliny's and the things of that nature. What's really peaking here in Colorado? What's the jam? What's hitting on all cylinders for Colorado brews right now?
Back up on that. I think what makes Colorado great is we're diverse. Like, we have brewers here that do world-class German lagers. We have brewers that do world-class sours. We have brewers that do world-class maybe hazy IPAs, like the guys over at Cerebral, right? So you go to the Pacific Northwest, they're really good at IPAs. You go to other parts, you go to the Northeast, they're really good at hazy IPAs. In Colorado, I think we're pretty much good at everything, right? Trends still happen here, though. The hazy IPAs are a thing here. So IPAs are a thing everywhere.
Is Budweiser not trending? Is that what you're telling me?
Well, it doesn't trend like craft beer does.
That's fair. Okay.
Budweiser's trending down. Craft beer's trending up. But no, that's the truth. Budweiser's trend down, and most of those big beer brands have trended down for the last 5-6 years, where craft beer is trending up. But the big beer is really losing share to more cocktails and booze than they are to craft. Craft isn't really stealing the Budweiser drinker.
Okay.
They're like more, Budweiser drinkers more going into cocktails, it seems like.
Vodka
that's what we're reading.
Like me.
Yeah.
And that's me. Sorry about that.
But I think there was kind of this perfect storm of this whole idea of everybody kind of thinking locally and wanting to support your local businesses and thing. And that met at a perfect time when craft beer was really gaining ground. And so I think it was kind of a perfect combination. Because I remember, I moved out here in 2010, and, there were a bunch of breweries, but still, even then, it wasn't like it is now today.
So, go way back to before Prohibition. There were about 3,000 breweries in the United States. And I think there might have been even more, right? But let's just say 3,000, because my brain isn't super sharp right now. And then Prohibition happened, and then for the next 50 years, there was about a total of about 30 or 40 brewing licenses issued in the United States until the late 70s, right? So it was dominated by big beer. Anheuser-Busch and Coors. Like, Prohibition really squashed the neighborhood brewery. Before Prohibition, there wasn't cold shipping, right? So every neighborhood had to have a brewery. That's the way it worked, period. They didn't ship beer back then. Every neighborhood had a brewery. You go to work and you go to a brewery, grab a couple beers, and you go home. But that was one of the complaints of what started Prohibition. The wives were pissed because the guys would come home drunk every day after work because they'd go to their neighborhood brewery, and they'd go home, and then the wives would be all pissed off. Their husbands are drunk, and that's really what started Prohibition. We won't get into a Prohibition lesson today, but it took a long time to get back to those pre-Prohibition levels. We're at 7,000 breweries around the country now. We opened about 1,000 or 1,500 breweries nationwide this year.
Wait, how many numbers? How many did you say?
Between 1,000 and 1,500 opened this year in the United States.
So what is this?
Colorado, we opened about, I think it's like 75 we opened in the state this year. In 2018.
What's the, and you mentioned, back in the day, it was kind of hard for them all to stay around before the boom. Is it similar to that of like the restaurant industry? As our listeners know, we're big in the food game. Not, 2 out of every 3 restaurants don't succeed. Like, is the brewing game as cutthroat, as difficult? And does Golden and the banquet team out there, do they pose a threat to... and obviously, we're not in the same market, with macro domestics and then micros or crafts. How do they all kind of coexist?
Right.
Do you see a lot of failing as well?
Well, before, I don't know, let's just pick the 90s. Hell, the craft beer was a push conversation. You had to push it on them. Like, we go to beer festivals, we go to tastings, and we had to explain to them what is different about our beer than what they're used to with a Coors Banquet or whatever. Why is a craft beer, or back then a micro brew, different? And we had to have that conversation over and over. You go into a bar, you had to have that conversation. Now it's a pull conversation. Now they want it, right? So it's a different dynamic. So back then we had to teach people a craft beer. So I don't want to relate it to restaurants because I think it's just a little different.
Right.
To answer your question about Coors, are they a threat? No. A lot of people in Colorado look to Coors as sort of a beacon, right? They're not a threat, or they are not attacking craft beer. They're definitely playing in the space with their brands like Blue Moon, and some of those things. They're playing in the space, but they're not on a full attack. And Pete Coors is on record by saying, when this started coming up, the craft beer started opening up, he's like, if you guys get a call from a brewery, go help them. Go help them set up, teach them, learn them.
It's good for
what to do.
It's good for everybody in that instance.
So he's on that. That's a fact. He said that, and he said that to his staff, 25 years ago to support support these microbreweries. Anheuser-Busch, however, has got a little bit different sort of strategy on craft beer. They're a little bit more of a direct attack on what's happening. They're buying breweries. They're taking up shelf space and draft handles by what they're doing, and it's a little different. So,
And that may be because we're in a place like Colorado where we've been able to coexist, whereas down in St. Louis, that city's just like a cross, of interstates and fucking randos. Like it's Nelly and Peter Glick and Anheuser-Busch and the Cardinals.
There's some great craft beer coming out of St. Louis the last few years.
Are they competitive?
Like
on a national level, can they ship well? Or is it something like we've seen with New
You got to remember, most breweries don't ship beer anywhere.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Out of these 7,000 breweries, they're like we're today. Like they're brewing these little tiny systems in the back, and they're serving it at their bar, and that's it.
And they may distribute within the state. It's like, I remember only 3 or 4 years ago, Odell only distributed with the states that touched Colorado, and now they've kind of extended. But yeah, I mean, that's what makes Colorado so awesome, is because we're the only ones who can get most of the shit around here.
Yeah.
Unless I bring it home with me in my suitcase and check luggage.
Right.
Which I do a lot of.
But do that really? Didn't you came back from the family trip and brought New York micros back, and they sit in our refrigerator, unscathed by Kip, because I just, that's not my cup of tea. But at the same time, it's fascinating because there's so many different things going on in the industry. One team can be successful with like a saison, whereas somebody can do strictly porters or stouts, and both of them can coexist and both succeed very well
For
in
sure.
this environment.
But correct me if I'm wrong. Is Coors is owned like Coors is itself
Miller now, isn't it? Coors Miller.
AB Bev owns Budweiser, and that's
InBev.
Yeah, so InBev owns Budweiser and tons of other brands.
Right.
Like
and
larger brands.
Those are the evil. Those are the evil kind of giants that are trying to come in. Whereas,
I would say that they are just gigantic global business that's trying to take over all of beer, and they want to own all of beer.
Right.
They want to own it. Like not 50%, not 60%. They want 100%. So they're working at that. They're going hard. Where Coors, they've gone through some different ownership structures because they merged with Miller, and then there were some other things with SAB Miller. Long story short, they're now a Colorado-based or U.S.-based company again.
Okay.
And so their headquarters is in downtown Denver. So Coors is, they're still somewhat homespun, mostly homespun here.
Right, because, I remember it was a couple years ago, I was down in Asheville, North Carolina, and right after I left, I'd visited Wicked Weed, which we all know is a great brewery, but it was probably 2 weeks after I left, and they sold. And I remember they got a bunch of backlash.
Huge.
But at the same time, they kind of came out and said the reasons why, and I'm not so sure I believe everything, or I know, I don't know because I'm not a business owner. But at the same time, what's keeping a craft brewer or some kind of brewery that is starting to gain like really national momentum from kind of saying, hey, if these people can give us these resources, I mean, do you think that's just maybe a more personal philosophy?
Well, I would say it's a good chance if you're a brewery owner and you sell, you're not selling for resources. You're selling to cash out. You're selling for the big bucks, right? And you can't argue with that. It's the American dream. You can't argue with having a small business and you can turn it into $1 million+ payday. Get it, right? It is the bullshit on like, we want resources and we get this and we get that, and that's not what it is, right? And those are company talking points. That's what's happening. And people sell for different reasons. To be a millionaire, some people sell because they're in debt and they don't want to deal with their debt service. Some are selling because maybe the founders aren't getting along anymore and they both want out. Like, there's all kinds of reasons breweries sell, but you get the same talking points as you heard from Wicked Weed on every single one. Like, we want resources. We're going to get better quality. We're going to have all these different types of things that they say. And I think you're right. Like, it seemed a little too, I don't know, cliche and not very genuine and organic when they explained. And that's why I think the people with Wicked Weed and that place with that brewery sale in particular got really pissed off. They're like, hey, man, we supported you for this long, and you're giving us this spiel is why you sold? Yeah, we're out. We're out.
So circling back into Colorado.
Yeah, that's my bad. I threw us on a really long tangent.
No,
that's on me. I'll take the blame
those.
for that.
We love conversations. But so you did your time, or you were working at WinCoop.
Yeah.
And then did you have a job after that before where you are now?
Yeah. A lot more stuff I did since then. So when I left WinCoop, I went to Breckenridge Brewery to be their marketing director. And I was there for about 8 or 9 years. Helped them rebrand, do a lot of fun things until like 2009, 2010. We did a lot of hard work with those guys. Really liked working there. Really liked the people I worked with. It was a really great time. Learned a lot there. That's really, I think, where I got most of my beer industry experience that I still use today.
Like hands-on, like, so are you saying that like you could, like, have you ever done like a home brew and been like, I can do this? Or are you thinking more just on the other
side? Dude, I used to home brew before I got into beer, and then as soon as I started working at breweries, I was like, I gave my home brew system away. Like, my beer sucks. I'm going to drink this stuff. This is way better.
Shout out, and this is a great plug because this Baere Brew, I just re-upped for another cocktail for, the episode. This is a delicious beer that y'all picked out for me.
This is the Strip Mall Pale Ale. It's one of my favorite beers in Denver. It's a basic, everyday American pale ale. It's about 5.2, 5.3%, so you can drink a bunch of them, which is really important to me because I guzzle beer. You give me these 10% alcohol beers, I'm fucked up, and it's a short endeavor. I like drinking all day. I like drinking all evening. Give me the stuff that I can drink. I can just guzzle.
See, and now we're best friends because that's why I, and our listeners know I won't harp on it, but I'm the macro guy. But at the same time, this is something you can drink